All right, my name is Kiri McLeod. I'm a nurse at Sentara Heart on the fourth floor. It's an intermediate care, and I'm actually currently at work right now using this break to film this. Now, because I work at Sentara, they have a basically law that we cannot record any of the staff members during any sort of presentation, just for safety. So I did contact my mentor, and she gave me two different options. Either I could record this in front of a couple of people, or I could present this as if I was presenting to the staff members, and I chose that. So I did present this about a week ago, and pardon me, I'm at work, like I said, but I still have some positive feedback from it, which means that I think I got the point across. But for my topic, I chose improving relationships between night and day shift through team building exercises. I've been a nurse for about 9 months now, and immediately I noticed that there was kind of a divide between the two shifts. One shift would expect certain things from another shift would expect certain things from the opposite shift, and it just kind of created a divide. And in nursing, it's very much you need a team approach to do really anything, and this divide was kind of bending and almost breaking the team mentality that we should have. So I chose this as something to really address, and I think it addressed the topic appropriately. So for a cognitive objective, I chose that at the end of the teaching session, I want each and every staff member to identify 3 challenges or obstacles that their sister shift faces. So what are some of the duties of our opposing shifts? I have some listed here. I felt like it was very important to address them because I passed out to everyone a sheet and asked them to identify 3 tasks that their sister shift needs to complete, as well as 3 obstacles. And when I got these papers back, the feedback was phenomenal. I realized that there was such a lack of education and communication between what was expected and what was actually realistic. So, like in day shift, they have nurse practitioners, physicians, assistants, as well as the physicians themselves that can make rounds. So if something's a little off or they're confused, they can go around the corner or just wait a couple of minutes to ask for help, whereas night shift does not necessarily have that. So they rely kind of more on their skills to complete tasks, and whenever there's an issue, they kind of have to rely on themselves. So here we have chest tubes and pacing wires. Those are removed during the day by the physicians themselves. So day shift, they have to monitor for any acute changes, bleeding, heart rhythms kind of going out of control, pneumothorax, acute, dangerous complications. Whereas night shift, they have to monitor for more of the chronic, like prolonged bleeding or respiratory distress, just things that don't necessarily show up like that, but they're just as dangerous. As well as IVs. IVs here last for 4 days, so they expire at midnight. That's relied on upon day shift and night shift. Day shift, if they have kind of a hard stick, they can call the IV team and they can come in. Whereas night shift, we don't have that, so we have to kind of rely on each other. We do 3 sticks. If after 3 sticks one person gets it, cannot get it, they call upon somebody else. If that person cannot get it, they call upon somebody else. If that person cannot get it, they call upon somebody else. But the IV has to be replaced either way. Another thing is day shift. They interact more with the physicians and the families. So orders are changed around the clock on day shift, so they have to stay on their toes. 1 second, they're going into the Omnicell, pulling out a metoprolol. Next second, they go to scan it and give it to it. It's been discontinued and changed to Lisinopril. Whereas night shift, they don't really interact with the patient's families as much, and by the time night shift comes on, pretty much all of the orders are set. Let's see. Oh, and the last thing is day shift. They're constantly discharging patients, whereas at night we actually tend to bring them in more right at change of shift, which makes things a little bit difficult, but it gets done. Alrighty. So, like I said, what I did supply for this teaching session was a list of each duty that the teams must have, the shifts must have. And I did also pass out a handout that I included in my paper of the importance of teamwork, because, you know, it's important. Let's see. And then I also asked my manager, who he really helped me get this project together. But I asked him to kind of put his 2 cents into it, see what he's noticed about the divide and how he felt that there was miscommunication. He was amazing about it. He made some great points, and in the end, it was all about communication. You can never have too much. Let's see. So it took about 10 minutes for me to present this project. I also asked for some feedback here and there, and it started off a little tense. One shift would say, well, that shift doesn't do this, and the other shift would say, well, that shift doesn't do this. And I said, I understand your concerns, you know, but let's move on and let's have a bit of an open conversation towards the end. Alrighty, so for my psychomotor objectives, I asked that each learner should be able to identify 2 skills that each shift must possess. Now, both shifts are required to have the same basic amount of skills, of course. Day shift, they tend to be 3 to 1. They have enough staff that they are able to get that, which is amazing. And they tend to have care partners all the time as well. You know, it's busier, it's fast-paced, like I said, orders are changing around the clock. Whereas night shift, we don't always have a care partner, very understaffed, so we're always 4 to 1. Sometimes the charge nurse even has to take on patients, which can be very difficult, because when we need something, the charge nurse is focused on caring for their patients, so they can't just dump their patients to come help us. They have to make sure their patients are all set first. Because of this change, when tasks aren't completed during the day, night shift tends to get a little bit frustrated, because not only were they 3 to 1 and had a care partner, and sometimes we'll also have students, nursing students, you know, that happens, and it does get a little bit frustrating for night shift, because now they have to do it, and it's not like we have all day to do the tasks. There's a certain amount of time, you know, we usually settle down around midnight, and it's not like you can wake your patient up at, you know, 2 a.m. to change an IV or do a dressing change. You can't do that. That's rude. And just not conductive to a healing environment. Sleep is the best medicine. So because of that, it gets a little bit frustrating. And also, like I was saying before, when there tends to be a little bit of confusion with the patient, like their status has changed, they have any questions, day shift has NP, nurse practitioners, around the corner, whereas night shift, if we have an issue, you know, we got to call the physician's assistants on call, or weekend, the NP's on call, we have to wake them up. And of course, they express frustration, you know, they want to sleep, and we don't want to bug them too much, but if there's a change in status, we have to do our job, we have to advocate for our patients, so that kind of makes things a little bit difficult when it comes to communication again. Alrighty, so for this was actually a very fun exercise. We did some role playing. I would ask the night nurse to act out a day shift situation, and the day shift nurse to act out a night shift situation. So for my situation 1, I said a patient comes up from the ICU. Blood pressure is 109/62, heart rate 65, and you cannot obtain an oral temperature. What do you do? So the day nurse, who was acting out a night nurse situation, said, oh, we would call an MRT because nobody can help us. The night nurse said, well, you know, you could call an MRT, or you could try to obtain an axillary temperature or rectal temperature. And I thought that was really interesting, which of course you would try other means of obtaining a temperature, and if you can't, then you need to figure out what's going on. Of course, you would check the patient's status. So after this situation, we all kind of had everybody put their input in. And we did a couple more situations, another one being a patient comes up from care unit with a soft groin site after a TAVR, which is a transaortic valve replacement. 30 minutes later, the groin site and scrotum are swollen and increasing. Day nurse said they would apply pressure, send somebody around the corner to find an NP. Night shift said apply pressure and call the doctor. If they don't get a response back, call an MRT. So after we did a couple more situations, I learned that night shift felt that day shift was more catered to because they had the nurse practitioners and physician's assistants, whereas day shifts thought that night shift just called MRTs just out the wazoo. So that was a big miscommunication there as well. But these situations, like, we did a discussion after it, and the team got really into it, and they love kind of taking on a role of somebody else and discussing it too. So I think that went really well. Alrighty, so the last of the objectives would be at the end of the teaching session, I want everyone to verbally express to me the importance of teamwork, not just day teamwork, night teamwork, teamwork in general for the team. Alrighty, so this is when I opened up kind of a discussion. Why do we feel like there's such a divide? And anybody who wanted to discuss could. But I also had a box in the middle of the room with a bunch of little papers, and I wanted every single person, I don't care if you were a manager, unit coordinator, every single person to write down something and put it in. And then I pulled it out and we discussed it, how everybody felt. People really started to open up, and it seemed to be like that tension, which not only were day nurses sitting with day nurses and night nurses sitting with night nurses, but as we got up and moved around, everybody just kind of seemed to merge together. Alrighty, like I said, for my methods, we did use a group discussion. Alrighty, so what I did use for my evaluation afterwards was a post test. So I passed it around, I had everyone fill it out, and then turn it in face down. And I went over and I asked, I said, hey, how many people feel like they learned something about the other shift, or they understand them better? And 74% said they understand the other shift way better, and that beforehand they didn't feel that sort of communication there, and there was definitely a barrier. And the rest of the group said, well, they already knew the roles, and they still felt like there was a divide. And 74% saying, yeah, this is awesome, there's an improvement. That was a big percentage for me, and I took that as positive. But the other ones, still haven't gotten to them yet. But a great comment that I had from one of the unit coordinators was she felt like, the importance of teamwork in a presentation like this should be taught annually, because, everybody comes together, and then as time goes on, they kind of drift apart here and there. But, all in all, I think it went really well, and I felt like I learned a lot about my team. This was difficult because this wasn't something that I could get evidence on. I had to really kind of talk to people. I couldn't Google anything. So it was difficult, but this topic was very important to me, so that's why I pursued it. All right, so that's my presentation. All in all, like I said, I think I really learned a lot of it. I'm very grateful that I had this opportunity and that my team was so receptive of it. But thank you very much for watching.